So once again, welcome to this session on evolutionary computation and genetic algorithm. So in the previous classes, we have learned something about the introductory concepts of evolutionary algorithms. So from where did it get evolved and the basic functions, all those things. So where it could be used, what kind of problems could it be solved, all those stuff we have learned in the previous class. In this class, we'll look into what are all the basic and the standard genetic algorithm operations. So as discussed earlier, there are four major operations which is involved in genetic algorithm. So we'll go into depth of all the four genetic algorithm operations. So first let me enunciate the basic four operations in the genetic algorithm. The first one is a selection, the next one is elitism, and the third one is crossover, and the final one is mutation. Of course, there is a stopping criteria operation which is the last stage of this mutation. However, these four operations are set to. We'll start with the selection. So, as in an evolutionary algorithm, to make an organism to evolve, there is a need for some parents. So that is what we call it as a parent population in genetic algorithm. So the parent population may be numerous in number. So while programming, it could be a float, it could be an integer or whatever. But how do we select this initial population? So there are a few methods that are traditionally used to select the parent population. One is the Rowlett wheel selection, is the very common method. It is a probability based method where the selection of the solution is based upon the random fashion. So selection probability high dependent on units and scaling for fitness function. So the problem here is it may cause premature convergence to local optimum. Genetic algorithm usually deals with global optimal problem. However, local optimal is also has to be taken into account. And another two selection methods usually very specifically used other than Rowlett wheel selection is rank selection and tournament selection, which in detail we'll see in the future classes. The next operation obviously is an crossover operation. So as crossover is nothing but mixing or mating of two parents which is developed from the previous stage. However, one important thing that has to be noted is for given parents, the crossover occurs with specified probability that is less than 1. So the probability will be like 0. Something, and it will never exceed 1. So why it is done? Because if the probability is greater than 1, the parents will be directly placed in the next generation, which we don't want in an evolution to happen. Only the modified version of the parent will be taken to the next generation, and not the exact copy of the parent will be taken to the next generation. Here you can see two examples of crossover. One is 1-point crossover and the next is 2-point crossover. So you could see that the parents and the children. So there are two parents, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1. So they are taken into, they have become as children. So here. And this is 2-point crossover. There is only which means that two sets of chromosomes will be crossed over and to evolve into a new parent, offsprings we call it as. So the next part is the mutation. Usually, mutation in general terms, it is called as a sudden change in the chromosome. So in the gene, the gene is a chromosome is a sequence of gene, and a sudden change in a single gene is called as mutation. It generally happens based upon the environment. So you can see mutation operation introduces spontaneous variability. Mutation generally makes only a small change in the solution. So bit-based coding and real coding requires different type of mutation. So it is like flipping, a simple flip. Here in this example, you can see the third bit is 1, which is flipped into 0 in the after the mutation has happened. So a small changes will be taken place in every iteration. That is called a mutation. So, steps involved in a basic genetic algorithm, as we have already seen. The step 1 is an initialization. The next is the parent selection, which could be done by elitism or Rowlett wheel selection or whatever. The next step will be the crossover, in which each pair of parents identified in the previous step will crossover randomly. It will be in a splice point. It will be maybe a single step or an two-step crossover pop. The crossover pop probability is PC. And the next is there's a small gene gene replacement or a mutation. So as I said in the previous slide, a mutation is nothing but a small change in the chromosomal structure or the gene structure. So, and finally, the fitness is calculated. The fitness is calculated based upon the objective function, which we discussed in the first class. So, objective functions are nothing but how the solution should move. It is a condition based with the constraints, how the thing has to be happen. And finally, the final stage of the thing is the stopping criteria. The stopping criteria is usually defined in terms of iterations, but in certain cases where time complexity is also considered, it is the time required for the completing certain things is also taken into account. But usually in evolutionary computation, it is like a number of iteration will be taken into consideration. So these are the factors, that is operators in a simple genetic algorithm, and with a few examples in a real-time application, how should we handle this, implement this genetic algorithm, we'll see this in the next classes. Thank you.